Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and I'm here to review the Forever Purge. Or maybe our country in a couple years. I don't know, I really hope not. But this one really hits close to home. But so just to give a little perspective on my experience with the Purge films is I had not seen the first three Purge films, and then I went into theaters and saw the first Purge, which was the fourth film, which was a prequel. And now I've seen the Forever Purge, so let's just sandwich them together, and I just completely missed all of the regular purges that happened in between. But you have this film directed by Everardo Gout, who has worked on things like Mars, and he brings some personality to this, to be perfectly honest. With him and the cinematographer Luis David Sassans, there's some really inspired filmmaking here. It's gritty, it's dark, it's brutal. When it leans into special effects with like fires and explosions, it looks pretty bad. You could tell that this doesn't have a huge budget, but they try to give it a bigger scale. You see cities on flame, but just not with rock and roll. You're welcome for that Blue Oyster Cult reference. But the CGI is but when you really get down to it, there's some really inspired filmmaking here in terms of the action. The action's really thrilling in this. There's one particular sequence where they're inside the cab of a truck, and it's spinning around, and then they go out, and they're in the heat of it in El Paso, and I felt like I was in like a first-person shooter with just this camera going around with them, and it was intense, it was thrilling, it was incredibly well shot and staged. I'm just like, holy crap, I did not expect this from this movie. And then you have the Newton brothers, who have done scores for a lot of Mike Flanagan things, like The Haunting of Bly Manor and Dr. Sleep, and the score in this with like the synths and like tech just sounds like straight out of like 80s synth kind of score, really works. So like technically this really works, and I enjoyed it. From like a story's perspective, you have James DeMonico, who worked on the script, who's been a writer on all of these Purge films, and they do just enough to make you care about the characters, to add some weight to it. I don't know if any of these characters are going to be characters that you're going to like fall in love with and care about moving forward. But the idea of this film is basically a bunch of racist people are like, we're not going to let the purge end. We're going to purge all the non-real Americans. And you're just like, oh my, this is really leaning in there. And it hits you over the head with it, like a sledgehammer, especially like the ending voiceover, like broadcast moments. I'm like, my god. But like obviously it's leaning into very topical things. It doesn't do it in a very nuanced or with a whole lot of finesse, but they do it, and I think it's interesting enough. But the main story here is that you have this group of white people and group of Mexican people teaming up, trying to get across the border and get out of America to avoid all of these forever purgers. And like the dialogue in this is not great. There's a couple of like, well, I think it's more the acting, but like the lines aren't great. Like they gave this line away in the trailer. It's like, how does this translate? I'm like, that was just as bad in the movie as it was in the trailer. And like they use some like the really racist people, and some of the things that they say to the Mexican characters, so stupid. And it's just, the dialogue is not there. The characters are well written enough for you to care. But I think it's really the performances. Like, you have like a small shout out to Will Patton, who has some time in this, but really it's Josh Lucas at the forefront, and Cassidy Freeman are this couple. She's pregnant. Josh Lucas is more or less one of the leads, three, I would say, leads in this film, and he's rugged. He has some great line delivery as a way to shoot back at one of these forever purgers, and I'm just like, yes, that was great. And he has that like ruggedness that he brings to Yellowstone in those like flashback episodes. You have Ana de la Reguera, who was just in Army of the Dead and was in Nacho Libre and Narcos. She's great as Adela, and her husband in the film, played by Tinoch Hirata, who plays Juan, they're great together. They're great. They're kind of, along with Josh Lucas, the leads in this film. And they make it worth watching. And this film was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. This isn't a great film. This isn't like a really good film. I think this is a slightly above average action thriller that has something to say, even if it doesn't do it very creatively or interestingly. And it also is pretty well made and has some really intense action sequences that are pretty inspired. And I'm like, okay, I left the theater, I'm like, they could have done more with it, but I enjoyed it. And especially from the action standpoint, it was pretty inspired. That one sequence, though, was some great filmmaking, and honestly, it's probably one of my favorite scenes in movies this year. It's definitely up there, at least, and it really pulled me into the experience. And it all balances out to be a decent, serviceable action thriller at the end of the day. I haven't seen Anarchy or Election Year, which I heard are the better ones. I haven't seen the first one either, but maybe I'll check them out. But the Forever Purge, if you just want something crazy and adrenaline-fueled this 4th of July weekend, because America, go check out the Forever Purge. But those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.